September 13th. It's 7:09 p.m. So we'll call the Finance and Revenue meeting to order with myself, Nick Allen, Bernie Flynn, and Brian McGinnis. Item number 2 is comments, suggestions, petitions by residents in attendance regarding items not on the agenda. Seeing none, we will move right into 3A, which is the presentation of our 2024 Administration, Finance, and HR budget.
Good evening. Tonight, we're going to review the administration preliminary budget for 2024. This budget includes the finance and the administration department. The finance department is made up of 3 employees, the finance director, and 2 staff accountants. And administration is made up of the borough manager, the executive assistant, the HR director, the data manager, and the sustainability director. The next few pages, I have, little brief descriptions of what each employee does. So if you could go to the next page, please, Jeff, the page after, and then the page after that, and one more. So looking at the staff, as I mentioned, there are 8 positions between the borough manager's office and the finance department. Within the finance department, we did have an additional staff accountant that was working for us in 2023. They have since left employment, and we are not filling that position in the 2024 budget. Moving over to the revenue side, I'm sorry, I'll start here. This is the salary expense line items for 2024. As you can see, we are projecting a 3% decrease in salaries. That's because we are not funding the additional position that we had in the finance department, as well as we are shifting some costs within our workers' comp. We're going to be shifting those costs across all funds. Moving over to the next slide. This is the major revenues within the administration department. The administration budget does include all the major revenues for the general fund. That includes taxes, the health insurance refund, the transfers, and interest income. I'm going to start with the major increases in revenues, and then we'll talk about the decreases. So at this point in time, we have made some changes from the version that we had uploaded last week to what you have before you this evening. We do have increases in real estate taxes. So we did budget a conservative 2% growth in that line item, and that's based on the assessed tax value from 2022, and that has since increased a little bit to 2023. We take that amount that we receive from the county, we multiply it by the borough's millage rate. We backed off a slight amount for the firefighter and EMS tax credits, as well as any properties that we knew were coming off the tax records. We came up with a base number, and then we again adjusted that number by 2% for individuals that pay before April 15th for the 2% discount. And we came up with a revenue number of about $5.8 million, which is $111,000 more than what we budgeted for in 2023. The next line item that has an increase is EIT. We are budgeting a 7% increase in this line item. The reasoning behind that is we went through all of our collections from 2022 through from 2020 through 2022. We looked at the collections that we brought in. We did year-over-year percentage calculations. We looked at what we're collecting through 8/31, and then we assumed a 3% cost of living increase, meaning that employees within the borough who work or live here, we assumed that they would be receiving a 3% increase from their employers, and that's how we came up with an additional $400,000 increase in that line item. Sorry. Our next big line item that we have an increase is in interest income. One of the goals of our department is to be aggressive and more enhanced with our cash management. So we are proposing a $77,000 increase. from $2,500 in 2023 to $80,000 in 2024. We do think that's a doable amount based on making sure that, any excess funds that we have in the general fund, sewer and parking, that all of those funds are being invested in Pliget reserves and any other interest-bearing accounts that we can, take a good look at. We are transferring, we are increasing the transfer from parking. We're increasing that by 3% or $60,000. And we do have a $57,000 increase in the transfer from the fire fund to the general fund. That's part of the administration costs that will offset the $101,000 borough's cost increase in the new 2024 fire contract. Looking at the big decreases on the revenues, we are not budgeting any amount for the health insurance refund. Last year, we budgeted $400,000, and we have recently received less than favorable news from our PIMIC partners that our loss claims are, trending high, and the number is most likely not going to come in our favor for 2024. We are also decreasing the transfer from the sewer fund to the general fund. We're decreasing that by $150,000. Historically, we have booked the sewer relining in Public Works. We are now going to book that in the wastewater fund. So that's why that decrease is coming. We've also backed down the D transfer line item. Each month, I do get up and speak to how the collections are not coming into what we thought they would be for 2023. And that's also an assumption based on the mortgage rates in effect today and home sales not coming through like they used to. Last year, we had the ARPA monies that we were able to use to offset some of our major capital costs. Those monies have all since been allocated, and we do not have any of that in this budget that you have before you as well. Moving over to the expense side, we have 4 main categories that are increasing from last year. We have $91,000 that we are increasing in the administration department for fire hydrants. This historically has been paid out of the fire fund, but when we sat down and we went through the review of the fire contract, we felt that this was more an expense that should be paid from the general fund because the municipalities that participate in the contract are not using that service. That's more of a service that directly flows through to the residents of the borough. So we are going to account for this in the general fund. Those expenses are very high each month. We have approximately 263 hydrants, and the bills typically range around $7,500 a month. So that's how we came up with that number. We also have a $52,000 increase in our software maintenance line item. If you remember back in, this year, we had two big maintenance software programs that we paid for, Cardiograph and Brightly. These costs that we're showing in this budget are for the user maintenance fees to run those programs. We are also increasing the payroll processing by $25,000. That's for the HR, the new package that our HR director spoke about last night. And then in our debt service, we have one piece of good news and one piece of bad news. So we have our 2013 library debt payments. Those will be ending at the end of this year, but our 2016 building principal payments are going up by $195,000, and that's all set by our loan payment schedules. Moving over to the last page, the goals for 2024. So we are going to continue to be financially transparent and reliable in our reporting. As I talked about, enhanced cash management, and again, making sure that our annual audit commences in April and that you will have your report by July. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
So, good evening, Mr. Leonti. As you're looking at the budget as it sits today, well, first of all, I didn't know we ever rented fire hydrants. That $100,000 just came to me like, a wet towel. Is that's always been in the fire fund?
Historically, it has been. Each month I do report that the utilities line item is over budget, and
Yeah.
that's the big reason for that.
Yeah. So the other four municipalities, how were they paying for their fire hydrants?
These are for the fire hydrants specifically in our borough.
Right.
That's why we philosophically feel that it's, an expense that should be paid from the general fund, not by the surrounding municipalities within the contract.
So per month, it's around $7,500 for the rental of the fire hydrants.
Yeah, it's for the payments, the monthly bills that we receive for Aqua for all of our fire hydrants.
Why don't I ever see them here testing the fire hydrant? But not a question for you, Mr. Metric. If I'm paying $7,000 a month, I've never seen the fire hydrant turned on and tested in the borough.
Fair question. I'll get an answer. I'll ask Steve Pelna, but I do know, having seen these bills and paid these bills before,
Yeah,
you get charged. It's like street lighting. You get charged by the fixture.
yeah, yeah.
Whether you use it or not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it just seems to me that back when I was little, that was a week or two ago. We used to play in the water from the fire hydrants when they tested them. They don't test them in the borough that I see, because I never see any water running down the street into the culverts. So,
Keep in mind too, it's worth mentioning that this is money that's invested in the community, and having firefighting services in a denser community like ours benefits every property owner and by extension renter in the borough, because it lowers the insurance costs. If you live in a part of the county like I do where there's no fire hydrants, you pay a lot more for your homeowner's insurance, because the only water they have to put out the fire is what comes in the truck.
yeah, thank you. Thank you, Barb. I appreciate it.
Mr. McGinnis?
No questions here.
Okay, there was just a couple comments that I had just because I feel like this is the beginning of budget season. Yay. Best time of the year. I think this budget is extremely important. I think it's the most important one we've done since I've been on council for a number of reasons. When I started my term on council, it was the beginning of COVID, which was a wild time, especially in Finance Committee. I'll never forget that meeting where we crunched the numbers and found we were losing like over 100K a week, I think it was,
Yes.
just on parking.
Yeah.
Wild. So that's not an issue anymore, which is great. Then after COVID, we got ARPA, which was super helpful for trying to make us whole with all of that. But again, financially, just very abnormal. I see this as the first year since I've been on council that we're going to pass what we can consider a normal budget. So I think this is a big opportunity for Finance Committee to, if we get this one right, I think it could project really well financially for us long term. So a couple of things that we've seen that I've really appreciated with our budgeting process so far is long-term planning. We've seen a lot of 5-year capital plans. In the fire fund, we've gone even further than that, and we've looked decades ahead and anticipated costs there, all with the goal of evening out what we expect to budget each year. And I think that's especially important now that we're moving into, like we were saying, the higher interest rate environment. We don't want to be surprised by future expenses that, maybe we're 10% above budget one year for our capital expenses for, what we're anticipating. And then all of a sudden we have to finance at a higher rate than we would have in the past. By looking ahead and planning ahead, we can set the money aside now, and we can make money on that money instead of us having to spend money borrowing because we weren't prepared for something that as a borough, I think we could have seen coming. And I think our crystal ball really is our ability to look at the data, which I appreciate with the GIS stuff we're doing. It really seems like we're stepping into kind of a new era here where we're able to anticipate costs and expenses, and we're able to save and set money aside for them just to make sure we smooth out any issues that could come down the road. And one that I was talking with Mr. Metric about last week was that health insurance refund. That looks like it's not helping us out at all this year. So that looks like a $400,000 swing for us. And I think when we tried to look at averages, that was, what was it, like 100, 200, yeah, maybe like 230, something like that, $1,000 a year. That's the kind of thing that we can plan for as an average. And if we're smart with how we're managing our cash flow, which it sounds like that's what we're moving towards, that doesn't have to hurt us anymore. When we get a good year, it won't be this surprise gift. But when we get a bad year, it won't be, a surprise thorn in our side where we have to go to the residents and then ask for an unreasonable tax increase, which happened in 2020. That first figure, I think, was in September of 2020. At that meeting, there was a proposal for, we didn't end up going with it, but there was a proposal for a 32.3% increase in our millage rate, which was insane. That was wild. I'll never forget that night as well. So I just wanted to say that I think this budget, we really need to understand what our long-term trends are, and we need to figure out how to get our revenue in line with that, whether that's property tax increase or not, or whether it's maybe trying to come up with a schedule for how we could maybe anticipate property tax raises looking in the future. Because I think communicating to residents what we can expect over the next several years is something that I know as hopefully a future homeowner in the borough that I'd love to see is something I can kind of count on, instead of 1 year hearing that a finance committee meeting, they're floating around a 32% increase number. So just keeping that planning in mind is something I think we can really finally focus on this year. And that's a lot of the work I wanted to do on council anyway. So I'm encouraged and I'm excited to keep going. So thank you for all that work.
The one follow-up question, in the administration part, that's the budget thing you just, the budget synopsis you just gave us. You mentioned one soul leaving because we're not replacing them. I didn't see or hear any additional bodies being added for 2024 in the administration side.
That's correct, yes.
All right, thank you.
Any public comment or questions tonight? Okay, great. Seeing none, we can move on to our financials, item 3B.
So starting with page 1 of the report, or I'm sorry, page 2 of the report, for the month of August, we started the month with 19,716,081 in cash. We brought in 6,855,660. We transferred or spent 5,975,769, and this left us with an ending cash balance of 20,595,972. Moving over to page 3, the budget to actual by department. For the year ended August 31st, we had actual revenues of 28,988,883. This is offset by actual expense of 22,279,227. This leaves us with a net income across all funds of 6,709,656. I don't have too many highlights for the month of August. Real estate taxes continued to perform well as EIT. August was a very good month for EIT as we got one of our bigger upticks. That generally happens after employers file their quarterly returns, and then we get our larger upticks the month after. There are a few line items that are trailing budget. Those have been the same ones that have been consistently throughout the 8 months of reporting. The majority of that being in the fire fund, in the equipment maintenance, utilities, and equipment repairs. In the wastewater fund, overtime is overspent by $8,000. The emergency contingency is overspent by $35,000. That's in response to the spill. Parking overtime is overspent by $3,600, and the police overtime is tracking well. Are there any questions?
Any public questions tonight? Yeah, sure. Come on down, Mr. Travis. Yeah.
Brian Travis, 304 South Walnut Street. If we do end up with a net income at the end of the year, where does that end up going? Does it go towards next year's budget?
So net,
Yeah.
So net income generally is not all cash. It's what the revenue comes in last year expenses, and then you have certain accruals. So it's not necessarily that we have $6.7 million in cash. If you look at the first pages here, this is our treasury report that shows like the physical cash balances in all of our accounts. So this is broken out by all of our general fund, our fire fund, sewer, parking, and some of these are operational as well as restricted accounts.
Okay.
And if you'd like to, I'm here all the time, so.
It's more of a curiosity.
How's it going?
Darrell Cook, South Walnut Street. Fund 16 had a $27,000 legal expense. Was that for foreclosures and liens?
That's Fund 16 is the stream protection fund. That would be in direct response to the litigation with Westchester University.
Okay, great. Thank you for the clarification. Any other questions tonight on this one? Okay, excellent. Seeing none, we can move on then to item 4A, which is to approve a resolution to amend Chapter 99 of the Borough Code to provide a property tax credit for certain eligible qualified firefighting and EMS volunteers.
This is a action council should have considered along with the ordinance from last month. It's our fault not to have teed this up properly. This is a resolution that the ordinance references. So this is just tidying up administratively and making it effective and lawful.
Sounds good. Any issues with that? Any questions, concerns?
None. And again, that was for $1,000, correct? Thank you.
Any public comment? All right, call that 3-0. Thank you. 4B is to approve our lease amendment with Stoked Like LLC, known as Pliables, 22 South High Street and the High Street Garage.
So this is coming up to you because we did not receive notice from the tenant in the time stipulated in the lease that they intended to renew. So when I called up the tenant and I said, "Are you intending to stay?" They said basically, "Oh, we didn't catch that deadline. We would like to stay." So in order for them to stay, I can't unilaterally let them stay. I need an action or amendment of council because they are in breach of, or actually what should happen in the current lease agreement is they should surrender the property at the end of, sorry, it's either this month or October. I don't know the date off the top of my head. But having done a very small amount of commercial leasing in my career as a borough manager, we did operate a 35,000 square foot property in my prior job where we were negotiating leases. You're always a little better off going with the tenant that's there, especially if they're happy and you're happy with them and the relationship's going well. And I think that's all true in this instance. So we proposed basically allowing them to exercise their option to renew that was present in their lease and foregoing that requirement for us to have notified us 180 days prior. But we're also going back to correct the error that the borough made in adjusting their rent according to CPI. So we are baking that rent adjustment back into this amendment to this lease to make the borough whole.
Any questions or concerns there?
No.
Stressful deadline. Any public comment? Excellent. All right, we can recommend that 3-0 as well. Item 4C is to approve the calculation of the MMO of the non-uniform and uniform pension plans.
So you have the two MMOs before you. For the police pension plan, the 2024 MMO is 1,764,206. This is a decrease of 121,099 from the prior year. And then for the non-uniform MMO, 2024's amount is $472,557. This is a decrease of $189,859 from the prior year.
Okay, great. Any questions there?
Good.
Any public comment or,
No,
yeah, go ahead.
no, I'm good,
Okay,
thank you.
any public comment or questions there? Awesome, thanks. Always good to be trending well for that. We'll approve that 3-0 as well. 4D is to approve a resolution for PennDOT TASA grant application for $158,257 for Gay Street pedestrian infrastructure. Hey, well,
Hi there. If you recall our presentation from TPD in December 2022 about grants to fund the Gay Street closure, they identified two that were good probability as far as grants go for us. First was Chester County CRP. We went out and got that earlier this year. This is the second one. So the vision here is sort of a phase 2 project to phase 1. Which would be the infrastructure necessary for the shutdown at Church Street, Walnut Street, as well as a pedestrian safety-focused overhaul of the intersection at Gay Street and New Street, sort of one of the big corridors of entry into the open air market, which is really dicey. It's dicey to drive. It's even dicier to try to walk. Let people coming up 322, people coming up from New Street, pedestrians everywhere. So basically trying to make that safe and functional for everyone. We had a good conversation about this last night, and our vision, our marching orders to try to get this executed. Something I said I'd like to repeat here is that this is not the Gay Street project. This is a Gay Street project. What our public input process identified last year was Gay Street is, the open air market is great. We'd like to continue doing it. It's cumbersome for us to administer. It's cumbersome for us to set up and break down. And our police, fire, and EMS have not really been gung-ho about the idea, saying it's been tough for them to do their jobs the way it is now. So what we're trying to do here is put infrastructure in place, make it look good, make it functional, and make it as safe as it can be.
yeah, thank you. Any questions on this one?
May I point out just a typo in at least my copy of the agenda? We're missing $1 million on the agenda. Just to clarify, the resolution is for transportation alternative set aside grant in the amount of $1,158,257.
What's the agenda say? 158?
It's 158. We could only do half of an intersection with that.
That's about as bad as typos get, leading
No,
a zero off.
And again, just to clarify, so that's Hannum Avenue and Gay Street going up that way, correct?
It's where it's the intersection of Gay Street and New Street, basically between our parking lot and St. Agnes.
Right, okay.
The sidewalks are bad there. People come flying around that corner, coming up Hannum Avenue, revving their motorcycles to sound up really cool. And you come around that corner, and then there's pedestrians crossing every which way because it's not clear where they're supposed to cross. And I think the most dangerous part is if you're coming up New Street, you're looking down Hannum Avenue trying to find a gap. You see one, you floor it, and again, as soon as you pull on, you're looking at pedestrians trying to cross.
No, I think that's good. I think you all know I love infrastructure. Going back to the Gay Street project, the original first phase, in which case we received a grant.
Mhm.
Are we taking any public input as far as what we want to see with that particular project? And if so, would we be naming an ad hoc committee? Who would they report to?
Yeah, so that's what we,
No, I mean, I was quoted in the paper in saying that, but anyway, yeah.
Well, we had the exact same question out of this microphone last night. It was great.
Okay.
And
I
Bill
didn't see
danced
that.
really well.
I didn't see that. I apologize.
Yeah, it's okay.
yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
I'll give a
Start
cliff.
dancing.
I'll give a cliff note so we can all go home. So there is absolutely room for public input in the process of what the design will look like. What the county gave us money to do was basically easy to open and close crash-proof gates that are built into the streetscape. We talked about HARB, because one of the things I said about the closure now is, we have the HARB submissions every month, and we nitpick over the appearance of the tiniest little things uptown. And then when we close the street, it's orange plastic jersey barriers, it's concrete blocks, it's this reflective signage. It doesn't fit, it doesn't look good, it doesn't give a first impression to people coming to Westchester for a good time. It's not the aesthetic we're trying to create there. So we have committed to zero aesthetic design criteria. I think there's lots of room for public input in that process, and it's something that we would want HARB's involvement in as well to make sure it fits, it looks good, and it's Westchester through and through.
Thank you.
Shorter than tonight, too.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that. Any public comments here? All right, seeing none, we'll move to, sorry, we'll call that a 3-0 recommendation, I'm assuming. We're good on that? Okay.
Yes.
4E, we'll head ahead to our purchasing approvals. Should be fun. E1 is approved payment to all event party rentals.
So this payment approval request is for $10,682.47. This is for equipment rentals at the restaurant festival.
Any questions on that one?
No.
Any public comment or question? Okay, we'll call that one 3-0. E2 is for Edwin Elliott and Co.
This payment request is for $11,380. This is for Minor Street Pump Station valve repairs.
Amazing. Any questions, concerns?
No.
Public? Excellent. We'll call that one 3-0. E3 is to approve a payment to USALCO.
This payment request is for $12,100. This is for the purchase of aluminum chloride, and this is per a contract that has been signed and approved by council.
Any issues here?
No.
Any public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll call this one 3-0 as well. And then E4 is our payment to Axon Enterprise.
This payment request is for $10,476.40. This is for the purchase of 4 tasers and cartridges to go with those.
Cool. Any questions there?
No.
Any public comment? All righty. We'll call that 3-0 as well. And then up last in our action items is our minutes. Were there any issues with our minutes? All right. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and call those approved. Is there any other business tonight? All righty. We'll go ahead and adjourn at 7:43.